the heart of Japan's Aokigahara forest, known to locals as the Sea of Trees, the jungle sprawled like a living labyrinth, its ancient cedars and pines twisting into a canopy so dense it devoured the sun. The air was thick with the scent of damp moss and decaying leaves, and the silence was unnatural, broken only by the occasional snap of a twig or the distant, mournful cry of a bird. Aokigahara was a place of legend, whispered about in hushed tones as a realm where the veil between the living and the dead was perilously thin. The villagers at its edge called it the Yurei Grove, a name that carried the weight of countless tales of lost souls, vengeful spirits, and those who entered never to return. It was here, in the summer of 2025, that four friends, Hiro, Aiko, Kenji, and Yumi, ventured on a dare, their laughter masking the unease that gnawed at their hearts. They were urban thrill-seekers from Tokyo, armed with flashlights, a camera, and a thirst for adventure, determined to spend a night in the jungle and live-stream their bravery to their followers. But Aokigahara had no patience for hubris, and the jungle was hungry.
The group entered at dusk, the sky bleeding crimson as the sun sank behind the jagged silhouette of Mount Fuji. Hiro, the self-appointed leader, clutched a crumpled map he'd bought from a shady vendor in Fujiyoshida, claiming it marked a safe path through the grove. Aiko, the skeptic, rolled her eyes but followed, her camera recording every step, her voice light as she narrated for their audience. Kenji, quiet and introspective, trailed behind, his eyes darting to the shadows that seemed to pulse at the edges of their flashlight beams. Yumi, the youngest, clung to her backpack, her fingers tracing the prayer beads her grandmother had given her, a talisman against the unknown. The jungle welcomed them with an oppressive stillness, the air growing heavier with each step, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. The path, barely discernible, wound through gnarled roots and volcanic rock, the ground uneven and treacherous. Hiro's map proved useless within minutes, its markings smudged and nonsensical, but he pressed on, his bravado faltering as the darkness deepened. "It's just a forest," he said, his voice too loud, echoing unnaturally. Aiko's camera flickered, its battery draining faster than it should, and Kenji whispered that he'd seen something, a pale shape flitting between the trees. Yumi's beads slipped from her fingers, scattering into the undergrowth, and she froze, her breath hitching as a cold breeze brushed her neck, though the air was still.
As night fell, the jungle transformed into a realm of nightmares. The canopy above became a black void swallowing the stars, and the flashlights cast feeble pools of light that seemed to shrink with every step. The group stumbled into a clearing where an ancient shrine stood, its torii gate splintered and draped in moss, the stone lanterns cracked and lifeless. Aiko's camera captured the scene, but when she reviewed the footage, a faint figure appeared in the frame, a woman in a tattered kimono, her face obscured by long matted hair. "That wasn't there," Aiko whispered, her voice trembling. Hiro scoffed, but his hands shook as he lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating the clearing. That's when they heard it, a whisper, soft and sibilant, weaving through the trees like a serpent.
"Kaerinasai,"
it hissed.
"Come back."
In a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, Kenji, his face pale, clutched his jacket, muttering about Yurei, the restless spirits of those who died in despair. Yumi, tears streaming down her face, begged to leave, but the path they'd taken had vanished, the jungle shifting around them like a living trap. The whispers grew louder, overlapping into a chorus of anguished voices, and the air turned frigid, their breaths visible in the beam of their dying flashlight.
Panic set in as the group realized they were no longer alone. Shadows moved at the edge of the clearing, humanoid but wrong, limbs too long, movements jerky, like marionettes cut from their strings. Hiro shouted for everyone to run, but the jungle seemed to resist, roots snaking up to trip them, branches clawing at their clothes. Aiko's camera fell, its lens capturing a fleeting image of the woman in the kimono, her face now visible. Eyeless sockets, weeping black ichor, her mouth stretched into an unnatural grin. Kenji screamed as something brushed his ankle, a cold, clammy hand that left a burning mark on his skin. Yumi, sobbing, clutched Hiro's arm,
her voice hoarse as she recited a prayer her grandmother had taught her, but the words faltered as the whispers drowned them out. The group stumbled through the undergrowth, their flashlights flickering, until they reached a ravine, its depths hidden in shadow. A rickety rope bridge spanned the gap, its planks rotted and swaying in the wind. Hiro, desperation in his eyes, urged them across, but as Aiko stepped onto the bridge, the ropes frayed and she plummeted into the darkness, her scream echoing until it was abruptly silenced. The remaining three froze, their hearts pounding as the whispers turned to laughter, a cruel, guttural sound that clawed at their sanity. Hiro, Kenji, and Yumi pressed on, driven by primal fear, but the jungle seemed to toy with them. They found Aiko's camera, its screen cracked but still playing, looping footage of the woman in the kimono walking toward it, her head twitching unnaturally. Kenji, his nerves frayed, began to mutter that the Yurei wanted them, that they'd disturbed something ancient and unforgiving. Yumi, her prayer beads gone, clung to a small charm in her pocket, whispering apologies to the spirits, her voice barely audible. The jungle grew denser, the trees closing in like a cage, their branches forming grotesque shapes, faces frozen in agony, hands reaching out. Hiro, his bravado shattered, admitted he'd lied about the map. He'd bought it as a joke, never believing the stories. The confession hung in the air, heavy with guilt, as the ground beneath them softened, turning to mud that sucked at their shoes. That's when they saw the markers, ribbons tied to trees, faded and torn, left by others who'd wandered into the grove and never returned. Some bore names, others desperate pleas scratched into the bark. "Help me. I'm sorry. Don't follow." Yumi's knees buckled, and Kenji caught her, his own face a mask of terror. The whispers now formed words they understood. "Stay with us, forever." And the air grew so cold their fingers numbed, their flashlights dying one by one.
In a final desperate bid for survival, the trio stumbled into another clearing, this one dominated by a massive tree, its trunk gnarled and pulsating as if alive. At its base lay offerings, rusted knives, faded photographs, and bones, human and animal, bleached by time. The woman in the kimono stood before the tree, her form flickering like a broken film reel, her eyeless face fixed on them. Hiro, driven by a mix of fear and defiance, charged at her, swinging a branch, but it passed through her and he fell, clutching his chest as if something had seized his heart. Kenji, tears streaming down his face, tried to drag Hiro away, but the ground split, roots erupting to ensnare them, pulling Hiro into the earth as he screamed, his voice fading into a gurgle. Yumi, alone now, faced the Yurei, her charm clutched in her trembling hands. She whispered her grandmother's prayer, her voice growing stronger with each word, a defiance born of love and memory. The Yurei shrieked, a sound that shattered the air, and the jungle trembled, the trees' pulsations faltering. Yumi ran, her legs burning, guided by a faint light she couldn't explain, a star piercing the canopy, a beacon of hope. The whispers pursued her, clawing at her mind, but she didn't stop, her grandmother's voice echoing in her heart. Dawn broke as Yumi staggered out of Aokigahara, her clothes torn, her body bruised, but alive. The villagers found her at the forest's edge, delirious and muttering about the Yurei grove. Her charm, now cracked, was clutched in her hand, and her eyes held a haunted look that never faded. She spoke of her friends, of the woman in the kimono, of the tree that fed on despair. But no one dared to search for Hiro, Aiko, or Kenji. The jungle kept its secrets, its whispers lingering in the wind. Yumi never returned to Tokyo, choosing instead to live in the village, tending the shrine at the forest's edge, offering prayers for the lost. At night, she dreamed of the grove, of her friends' faces twisted in agony, and of the Yurei's voice, soft and eternal. "Come."
bad. The sea of trees remained a silent sentinel, waiting for the next soul to wander too far. Its hunger never sated.